This is WARBIRD Radio.
On this episode of WARBIRD Radio, we're talking to one of the guys that I think is probably one of the most fun guys in the warbird business to be around. I'm talking about Randy Larsen. Randy flies all kind of airplanes. I've seen him fly P-82s, twin Mustangs, of course. P-40 was the airplane that I think of him flying the most from his early days. And we met at a place that is truly legendary when it comes to warbirds. The place? Well, you might have never heard of it. It's in Monaville, Texas. It's Bomber Field. And back in the day, we not only had Russian Bears in the sky, we had two B-29s that flew regularly, a passel of B-17s, fighters galore, all of this operating off of a 500-foot runway. Now it's expanded. How does this happen? Of course, these are scale model warbirds, complete with pyrotechnics and everything at this show. And Randy Larsen, the ringleader of the Texas Warbird Thunder team, joins me on this episode. Randy, how you doing?
Doing great, Matt. Thanks for having me on.
I'll never forget watching you and your dad out there flying together, just having a blast. And you always have just exuded fun. I mean, I've never seen you without a smile on your face when you're flying.
Oh, we've always had a blast. My dad was he was the one that actually got me into flying himself. Years and years ago, he learned how to fly at a local club in Alvin, Texas there, and he helped them with their runway, and then he kind of transitioned into warbirds and got my attention, and he said, "Hey, son, I need to take you to an event in a little town called Monaville, Texas, and let's go see some really big warbirds." I had never heard of it, never seen anything about it. I didn't know how to fly, didn't know anything about airplanes, and what a life changer that was.
My goodness. Well, for you and me both. I mean, growing up down in South Texas, flying the scale stuff and just being around the RC stuff, it's such an on-ramp for people who want to go on and maybe have a flying career. I mean, it really is the gateway into so much more, because you can't go fly a P-40 when you're 15, but you can fly one that's maybe fifth scale, and that's pretty cool.
Oh, it is crazy. It's amazing. Some of the young guys now, like I mentioned their names, Grant Schroeder and Mace Doonan, those guys that fly with us, they've both started out, and actually Grant Schroeder has gone on into a aeronautics field. I think he's becoming some kind of aircraft engineer, and that guy's an amazing RC pilot, and that's how he got started. Him and his dad, great guys to watch. If you ever get a chance to see them fly at one of these events, those young guns they're amazing to watch.
Yeah, they really are. They're fun to watch. I remember when Brett Wickheiser, who's now, I saw I guess he's the national champion now in the pattern world, showed up to our field. He was 6 or 7 years old up there north of Houston, and just started flying. And he's doing great. Of course, he's an airline pilot now too, if I remember correctly. But it is a gateway drug into the world of aviation, but it also really reinforces the history, and it reinforces what actually happened during World War II, because you can't build one of these things without doing a little research. And so for the parents who are listening, I always mention this because it's so true. You cannot build one of these things without reading and without understanding the engineering drawings behind it. Now, it's gotten easier, and I want to talk to you about that. But, in the past, you really had to kind of dive into this stuff, and everybody talks about, science, technology, engineering, and math, and even the art component of it. All of that is in model aviation, and people just kind of overlook it. Talk to me about that for just a second.
Yeah, I tell you, it's amazing. Back when I remember my dad getting me into the flying part of it, that was still back when what you call the old school guys
Right.
still building airplanes, out of kits, and
Yeah.
those were amazing. And I mean, just amazing what those guys could build and produce and do out of a box of sticks was incredible. Those guys, you talk about real artists, and I mean, just amazing craftsmanship on these planes. B.B. Weber, the owner of Bomber Field, the aircraft that he built, and all of his friends, I mean, the first time I walked out there, I was absolutely blown away. I said, these started out as kits, and my dad was like, yeah, these guys, I mean, you cannot believe the hours, the time, the effort, the research they did to build them scale like was just mind blowing. That and that was back then. I mean, it's amazing what these guys can still do. And the building has gone away a little bit through the years due to a little bit more ARF type kits, almost ready to fly, that you put together and what have you. But there's still some guys out there doing it, and I've got the utmost respect for those guys because they have got patience, and I mean it's amazing what they can build. It truly those guys, they really deserve a hats off to them for doing what they're doing. That's pretty awesome.
B.B. Weber, who's actually been on this show before he passed away,
wow,
built a large part of Houston and the metropolitan area of Houston, including the Astrodome. Had a big concrete company and heavy construction company, built a lot of roads and whatnot. And then he fell in love with the B-17. He'd always had this fascination with the B-17. And so he started out building RC B-17s, big ones, 10, 11-foot wingspan were some of the first ones that he built. And he needed a place to fly him, so when you own a heavy construction company, you go out and you find some land on the Katy Prairie, and you build what today is now Bomber Field. And back in the day, he had this huge control tower, all kind of crazy stuff out there. But, you were talking about the kits that he would build, and I know you remember back when he was still building the Bear. You'd walk out there, and you'd look at that thing, and BB, you talk about patience. He was such a hard worker, but he would say, well, yeah, he'd bring it out in that box truck that he had, remember? And and it looked like toothpicks and popsicle sticks. The planking and the sheeting on that thing alone was just incredible. I mean, I can't remember now. I want to say the Bear was huge. He donated it, if my memory serves me correctly, down there to the Lone Star Flight Museum, which is now in Houston, I think.
Actually, what's amazing about it, that airplane for the time that he built it, it actually has a 29-foot wingspan.
Yeah, there you go, 29 feet.
It is unbelievably huge. And the crazy thing about it, still to this day, what's wild, do you know that Russian Bear is still hanging in the Quonset hut at Bomber Field?
Well, I thought it went to Lone Star, but it's still hanging there. Oh,
no,
that's great.
It's the set. Well, it's a little bit sad, that it's been hanging there for so long. It's amazing to see, but the elements have gotten to it. The wings are kind of sagging on it, and it's been hanging there for so long. It's been kind of interesting talking to the guys in the club, asking them about it, asking the family, and it's been interesting. I don't think that his family wants to get rid of the plane yet. Some of the guys have offered to restore it and this and that. It's just been kind of interesting.
That'll be a Barry project someday. I was going to get to him next.
Barry Rayburn. Well, yeah. It would be a huge project, but God, that plane is just, if you walk underneath it and just look at what they did to build it, the custom Robart retracts that are in that thing that are one of a kind. I mean, absolutely amazing what he did. And I've still got some old VHS tapes of him flying.
I was there for the maiden flight, and I remember Tommy Giacomini. He came screaming in his Cub, and everybody was hollering. There was an airplane. And of course, BB didn't even care. Keith was flying the airplane back then, and just made a phenomenal landing with it. I mean, so many people that used to come out there that really inspired a great number of people to continue this, including yourself. And now, as a result of all those years out there, you've taken the show on the road, and I think BB would have just loved what you guys are doing there with the Texas Warbird Thunder team. You're bringing the fun back to all of this, and you're flying. You're taking the Joe Pastor school of thought, I think, on this, Senior at least.
I'll tell you, and Senior was amazing to watch. He was a great inspiration, always flying his giant bud-nosing P-51 thing called Hurry Home Honey. I loved watching him do that. One of the most amazing things to me, I was so honored. I was a fairly new pilot, but I had got to flying and, had gotten better and been going to Bomber Field with my dad. I had B.B. Weber came up to me one day. I was in the pits working on something, and he said, "Randy, is that your little P-51 Mustang there?" And I said, "Yes, sir, it is." And he goes, would you come up and fly some top cover for me when I fly my B-17? And I looked at him, I said, me? He said, yeah. He goes, I think you're a pretty good pilot, and I think you could probably keep from crashing into me. And I said, okay, I'd love to. So I was so honored that he picked me, one of the ones out of the crowd, to come up there and fly them, because you know how they were really, they were trying to be really careful with the B-17s because all the time, effort, money into them. They didn't want just anybody up there accidentally running into them or whatever. So I was so honored when, he asked me that, and that just, lit a fuse under me. Okay, I want to build some big stuff too. And that's kind of how my dad, got me into it, because he was all into warbirds too, all of his airplanes, and that just kind of got the ball rolling there. But yeah, I was honored, still am to this day. I'll never forget him asking me that. That was really cool. Really cool.
When BB asked you anything, you had to say yes. I mean, he was just he was that kind of a guy, and it's certainly a huge mentor in my own life, and just a great guy. But let's get into what you guys are doing today, because you go all around. You've got we're recording this the 1st actually of August. And this weekend coming up is the Livingston flying with that crazy guy up there named Larry Hultman, who's still building and flying airplanes. And,
he is
what a
cranking. You betcha. Now the Livingston event coming up this weekend, their Summer Warbird Sizzle, they call it. Yeah, that's the Texas Warbird Thunder group of guys that we started years ago. That was a kind of a fun, interesting little get together. I was actually at Bomber Field. That group hadn't even been thought about. And I was trying to get a yellow aircraft Japanese Zero that I was flying. I was trying to get it started. And this big guy looks over at me from the pits there, and he kind of smiles. He goes, you need some help with that? And I said, sure. Do you have a big starter? And he walked over. Well, that was Greg Yancey.
Oh, wow.
I know who this guy was. And he goes, oh, let me get this thing started, and we'll get it up in the air. And from that point on, me and him started laughing and had such a good time. We started flying together, and we were sitting at an event one day and talking, and just mentioned, like, it would be really fun to start a group of guys that were, all warbird pilots that traveled to events, and that, all know how to fly pretty well together. Good group of guys that get along really good, and go to all these events and have some fun. And we were kicking around ideas and names, and I can't remember which one of us said it, but one of us said, how about we call it the Texas Warbird Thunder Flying Team? Okay, that sounds great. And just kind of snowballed from there. Greg went and had some T-shirts made and some hats, and we started doing it, picked out some guys that we thought would be fun, that we knew could actually kind of fly together in formation and try to, put on a fun show and have a great time with everybody. And little did we know it was going to blow up from there and get as big and fun as it is. And we travel all around Texas. I think at the peak of the times that we were going to the shows, we were hitting 16 or 17 RC shows every year. And that was a lot. I was like every other weekend or so we were going somewhere, whether it was Texas, Louisiana. And it was so much fun. These guys, we've really had a great time, and it's just turned into something amazing. It really has.
I used to love going out on the road with BB and Carol Thomas and John, and we had quite a group back then. Bob Buckby and Luigi Wolf, and all these guys and ladies would travel together and go to these shows that are all over the state, and of course Louisiana, and all over and you see this happening all over the country still with certain clubs and whatnot. It's just fantastic. Back in the day, the guys that everybody wanted to join were down in McAllen, Texas, and oh my goodness.
Group guys, yeah,
boy, weren't they something? I mean, remember the day, and I think you shared this, and it got me. This is when I said I got to have Randy on. I'll never forget the day that you and Rick, and I guess it was it Bob Buckby?
Bob Buckby, yes.
Yeah,
sir.
everybody ran out there with those F7Fs, and my goodness, that was something to watch.
Well, what was crazy is my dad had just had, and y'all probably remember if you're in the RC community, Stinger Wallace.
Oh yeah.
My dad had just had Stinger Wallace test fly his F7F Tiger Cat. It was a Mod Air Industries big one with a pair of G62s.
And they didn't build very many of those because, from what I remember, Mod Air only made a few of those, and then like so many things in the RC business, the kit company disappears. But that was a gorgeous airplane.
Beautiful plane. My dad did in the Black Knight fighter version, but Bob Bugbee had one and Rick Michelina. And what was amazing is that at that event at Bomber Field, it's the first time that three of them had showed up and were able to fly together. They were like, "Oh God, we got to get you guys in the air together." And my dad turns and looks at me. Now, remember, I'm okay. I'm at that point. I'm pretty decent with flying. But he looks at me and he goes, "Randy," he goes, I want you to fly with these guys." He goes, I would trust you doing it more than me. So will you? So he kind of put me on the spot. And
had you flown the airplane yet at that point?
Never.
No, never. Come on.
Not flown. No, it had only been test flown by Stinger Wallace. And
oh, my gosh.
I said, "Are you sure, Dad?" I said, "I'll be gentle with it." He said, yeah, take it. You'll be fine. So, of course, I'm sweating it, and you got the Bomber Field, thousands of people behind you watching, and, all cameras are on you. And it's like, okay, keep my fingers crossed. Come on, don't start shaking thumbs. And it actually turned out fantastic. The fun thing about it, we all got up, flew together, and still to this day, that stands as the only time three of those have ever been together, giant scale ones at Bomber Field, and got to fly together.
And these are big airplanes, 10 feet across?
These are. I think they had 120-inch wingspan, if I remember correctly, somewhere in that end. But the crazy thing is I've still got the VHS tape, and if you watch it, I let, Bob Bugbee landed, Rick Michelina landed, and I told my dad, I said, "Dad, it's acting a little funny. Something's a little wrong with it." He says, "Well, get it down on the ground." So brought it around and fortunately landed it, went out into the grass, and when I turned it back at us, the left aileron had broken off and was just hanging there by the linkage.
Wow.
And I said, "It flies good on one aileron." And he just laughed at me, and he was like, "Man, I'm sure glad you were flying it," because he said, "I might have wiped it out." But that was so much fun, and that was those are memories that just won't forget. Those guys were great. Rick Michelina is still around, and his airplane, his Tiger Cat, is still around. But I don't know what happened to Bob Bugbee or his plane. I haven't heard anything about them in years. So and my dad,
Bob started flying, big airplanes, and I don't know whatever happened to his stuff, but I used to run into him at the airport.
And my dad,
once in a while.
My dad's big Tiger Cat, when he decided to sell off some of his planes, he sold it. I didn't even know he had sold it, and I still don't know the history of where it went to this day. So I guess maybe the last surviving one is Rick Michelina's. He sold it to a guy down in the valley, and he still got it. He posted up some pictures of it.
Yeah, Rick's airplanes don't crash. They don't crash. P-47 is 30 years old, whatever he's got it all. Hang out with us just for a second. We got to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back with Randy Larsen right after this.
Lock and load. This is WARBIRD Radio. Tune in. Take off. This is WARBIRD Radio.
We're talking to Randy Larsen. He is the ringleader for the Texas WARBIRD Thunder team, and they're an RC group based in Texas, as you might guess, and they go all over the region down there flying RC airplanes. We're talking about giant scale warbirds on this episode of WARBIRD Radio. I'm just glad to have you here. Randy, Bomber Field, such a huge place. The summer sizzle in Livingston is unlike anywhere else. I remember the first time I went to that field, the owner had a Rottweiler that looked like a Shetland pony. And the thing was sort of loping across the flying field. And I remember Larry Haltman looked at me and he's like, "Don't worry, it's pretty friendly." And I'm flying, and I'm thinking the whole time that I'm flying, I'm going, if this dog runs at me, it's over, right? Like, it is over. Had one of old Mr. Charlie's airplanes up in the air from Cut and Shoot, Texas, that we were test flying up there. But what a great place, and they embrace the heat. I remember when they started this out, Larry was like, "It's going to be hot." It's July, and it's in Livingston. They just embrace it, which I think is funny,
And what's really nice about them is, especially on like this event, they know, and they're really looking out for the pilots. They're like, "Guys, look, we're going to make sure that we got water there for you guys. We want to make sure that you guys," they really look after everybody a lot better than used to, put out ice chests with water in for everybody to use and take. And snow cone machine there and stuff, but they're really, what can you do? Here it is, summer in Texas. And I mean, the forecast for the next week and a half is 100 to 105 degrees with no rain in the forecast. So we just either got to put up with it and go do it and have some fun, take breaks, and just have a great time. But Livingston is a lot of fun. I really enjoy that club. Those guys, when we first took the Texas Warbird Thunder guys out there, I guess it's been about 3 years ago, Larry Halton was like, guys, I got to get all of us to come. I want to show these guys. The response was incredible. Some of the guys, the older members in the club were like, oh, we cannot believe what you guys do, how y'all fly together in formation and all the planes at the same time, and y'all take off together and you land together and you do this. And they were just absolutely floored. And Larry was like, yeah, see, I wanted them to see what it was really like. But they were so appreciative and just so happy. And the people that showed up, the spectators, had an absolute ball. They actually put it in the newspaper. They had some folks come out that advertised it, and I mean, it got a huge response also. So I think that really boosted their club and generated some new membership for them, and hopefully some of the younger crowd. And we had an absolute ball. They put on a great show there. They really do.
I got my start announcing air shows in the model world. And of course it's led to, what I'm doing today. But I look back on it and I think about everyone whose life was really touched in a big way by this hobby. And it's so important. If you've got someone that is really interested in aviation, I'm telling you, this is a phenomenal way to get involved in it. And, my mother and dad had a huge part in my life. And I'm not saying anything about that, but there is a community here that is a true untapped resource. And if you have a young person who's interested in this, in aviation, you've got to get them involved, because you can tell them all you want about how important the math and the science is behind this stuff. But if you throw them in to this hobby, they're going to figure it out, because they have to be successful. So guys like Randy and Larry, all these people that we're talking about today, this is a built-in community of folks who are willing and ready to help. If someone wants to get involved in this, how do they do it, Randy?
Well, I tell you, I've been a member of the club. I live down here in Wimberley, Texas, and I've been a member of the club in Austin for over 30 years, Austin Radio Control Association. And I was actually one of their pilots that would teach anybody that came in for years. And I tell you what, that was always a lot of fun for me. I live about 50 miles from the field, and that time when I was flying, I had 2 jobs, so I was trying the best I could and trying to teach. But that was a great time. Any of the local clubs like that, like Livingston, Bomber Field, ARCA, where we are, any of these local clubs around Texas, if you go to them, whatever area that you might be in, just go up to them, introduce yourself, and say, listen, I'm really interested and I want to learn to fly. Like Austin Radio Control Association has a group of designated pilots that'll teach you how to fly planes, and they have their own bank of airplanes that are ready to go, so somebody can actually show up to the club and right off the bat, first time they come out, they can put them up in the air and just on a buddy box system, and allow them to see, kind of set the hook and get them interested in, like, yeah, this is great. I do want to try this. So that's how you really need to do it. Just find a local club, a hobby shop will point you in a direction, or local club that you know of. Talk to some of the guys, especially on the weekends. Go out there, because that's when a lot of the crowds show up, and say, who do I need to talk to about getting into this? And they'll point you towards one of the flight instructors, trainers at the club, and we'll get you going. Because I tell you, it is a fantastic. There's so many clubs that that as the generations go on and guys get older, need some fresh folks in there to keep up the traditions and the flying and stuff going. So anybody we can get interested in it. That's what these events are so great for too. I love that they advertise events and go to the hobby shops and try to put them on radio stations or in the local news, because it really does attract some attention of the younger crowd. They're like, hey, Dad, let's go see that. And that hopefully will snowball into them getting into it. And like you said, possibly down the road, get them into a career of aviation. I mean, it works out great for everybody along the way. So
that sure does.
Yes.
It really does. And I want to ask you about the buy-in right now, because if they want to get into the Warbird stuff, what's a good budget? I mean, realistic here. If you've already got a radio, because today nobody buys a new transmitter, right? I mean, they just connect one to the space shuttle if you wanted to. But what are you talking about? Airplane engine, receiver, servo, all of that stuff. What's it take to get into a Warbird these days?
Now, are you asking like for a giant scale?
Yeah, for a giant, so something that would be comparable to what you guys are flying. If someone's listening to this, what do they need to budget for realistically?
Probably somewhere, if you bought everything brand new, say a 50 to 60 size Warbird from any of the local vendors, like an almost ready to fly kit, your ready to fly kits range anywhere from about $600 to about $1,000, depending on what you buy. The engines vary anywhere from $250 to $500 if you go gasoline. Now, if you want to fly electric, those motors are a little bit less expensive. You can do that. The retracts, if you want to run retractable landing gear that's air powered, those range about $250 to $300. All your basic accessories. If you wanted to step into a giant scale Warbird with everything brand new, realistically, you're going to spend about $1,500 to $2,000. That's realistically to get, if you had to buy a radio, all your radio gear, your servos, your engine, the airplane itself, any other accessories that go with it, retracts, it's going to wind up costing about that. Now, a lot of people look at that and go, wow, that is a lot of money. It is, for a giant scale airplane, that's about average of what they are. You can get into the smaller ones for less expensive, but I think me personally, I tend to enjoy the little bit bigger ones because they seem to fly better. They're a little more stable in the air. They're a little easier to work on, rather than the smaller ones and stuff. But anybody getting into the hobby, there's smaller Warbirds you can buy too. The electric foamy ones that are out there, you can buy the airplane radio electric gear for, maybe $400 or $500 for the smaller ones. But realistically, $1,500 to $2,000 for like say a giant scale P-51 that you want to fly somewhere in that area, just depending on what you do. But go to the airplane shows like we're having this weekend in Livingston. There's a lot of people that sell a lot of good used stuff that you can get for about half. Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. I was looking at Texas Warbird Thunder Flying Team. You have a big group on Facebook. You need to go join that group and ask to get in on there. Ken, one of the members there, has an airplane that was just calling my name. I'm looking at it right now going, oh, gosh. Remember Keith Coover's Red Baron Stearman, and then he had the other one, of course, that I think is still around. But he has a yellow Balsa USA third scale Stearman on there that he's trying to sell right now. Beautiful
one
airplane.
For $100, I think?
Yeah, $800. Yeah, that really needs to go to my workshop. It really needs to just come out here and live with me for a while. If
everybody, if you guys want to, please come and join us. Yeah, on Facebook just type in Texas Warbird Thunder Flying Team. We'll approve you on there. Lots of great information about where we're going, where we're flying, the events coming up. There's always stuff for sale on there. We have a really good time. I'm the moderator of that page, and I keep all the junk off of it and keep it very clean, and everybody knows it's family oriented. So it really has done great, and it's a great source for finding stuff and figuring out where the events are. We post up a schedule of all the upcoming events for the year that we're all going to try to go to. So good source of information for folks. Absolutely.
Well, Randy Larsen, thanks for hanging out today. A lot of fun to have you on, bud, and I hope to see you down the road here real soon at a show. Thanks again, Randy.
Thank you guys so much, and thank you for what you do, Matt. Keep doing it.
Randy Larsen from the Texas Warbird Thunder Flying Team. You can find him there on Facebook and, of course, at Livingston's big Summer Sizzle RC event this weekend. It's just on the northeast side of Houston, so no matter where you're listening from, if you really want to go and sweat with the best, get on a flight and go on down there and take an airplane or buy one when you get there. It'll be a lot of fun. My thanks again to Randy. My thanks to you for listening. Be sure and like, follow, share, and subscribe to Warbird Radio to help keep us on the air. Free of charge, of course, and with limited ads. We sure appreciate you listening. We'll talk to you in just a few days. So long for now.